So, it's come to my attention that a lot of you don't run enough interaction or removal in your commander decks, and I just have to wonder why. So, in my opinion, it is the responsibility of every player at the table in a commander game to pack enough removal and interaction in their decks to make sure that no matter what the table is doing, everybody can have some agency over the game. Games aren't really fun, in my opinion, when people are just shooting into the stratosphere as fast as they can with their strategies, and the first one to get the lethal strategy wins. Those kinds of battle cruiser type games where players are just watching each other build boards, they don't really appeal to me, and I don't think they appeal to a lot of players out there that are used to playing more competitive games of Magic, in 60-card formats, for instance. It doesn't feel good when you feel like you're working towards an end goal and you're just a little slower at working towards your end goal than the other players at the table, and then magically you end up losing every single game because, whoopsie doopsie, they dropped the 2 or 3 artifacts, enchantments, or creatures they needed to go infinite, and then suddenly you lost. It feels a lot better to be able to interact with these kinds of strategies, so I put together a list of 15 cards in each color that I think are really, really good removal or interaction pieces y'all should be using in your commander decks. And I chose 15 in each of them because I actually think about 15 ways of interacting with our opponents is the sweet spot in a lot of commander games. This allows casual commander decks to fight stronger commander decks because while their strategies may not be as optimal or as fast, they can actually catch up to the decks that they are fighting against. Now, granted, this number's a lot higher in something like EDH, but I'm not really a EDH channel. I'll talk about it once in a while, but honestly, I'm mostly focused on casual commander. And I'm not even gonna lie, the whole reason that this video is even happening in the first place was a discussion at my local card shop. At my locals, we were in the middle of a casual commander tournament. There was a CDH tournament and a casual commander tournament side by side. There's certainly some words I have for the efficacy of a casual, quote-quote, competitive environment, but in one of our games, I made mention at how I think removal is really, really important in games because one of the games we were in, several players were assembling multi-card combos, and they never got to get the actual combos off, and we ended up having the game get won by a player who ended up using basically combat damage. This happened because a lot of players at the table ran enough removal, and I enjoyed that. And then one player at the table said, yeah, I think removal is a really important thing to put in your commander deck. I usually use about 6. And I'm not gonna lie, that kind of took me aback for a second there. I do not think that 6 removal is enough in your commander deck, because that means you're only going to be seeing that removal maybe 1 piece every game. The average casual commander game lasts about 6 to 12 turns, so you're seeing 1, maybe even none of those pieces in most of your games. That just doesn't seem like enough unless you're trying to run tutors to grab your removal. But at that point, you're in a casual game. Don't chalk your deck full of tutors. We're not trying to do CDH. Just run the other removal spells so that you can do things like disrupt a problematic commander, or make sure that things like Bolas's Citadel or Smothering Tide don't get out of hand. I don't know. Seems kind of straightforward to me to run more cards that do that instead of just sitting back and being upset that those cards are being played. So let's go ahead and get into my list here. Let's go ahead and start with the color black. And I'm going to start with a very interesting spell for y'all. It's not actually a black removal spell. It's a black counter spell. Now, Death Grip is an enchantment that allows you to pay 2 black to counter any green spell. Most commanders are multi-pip commanders, and the likelihood that one of them will end up being a commander with green, this card can end up shining a ton in your games. And since most enchantment removal is either white or green, this can actually defend itself against most of the enchantment removal that exists in the game. Anywho. Now, why do I like this card? Well, because there's a lot of problematic commanders I think it manages to help you get around. The last time I used this, there was a problematic Korvold player at the table, and I managed to just keep stifling the Korvold multiple times until they had to waste an entire turn just casting Corvold for the purpose of draining my mana and then activating enchantment removal, which basically meant I got to control their turn with this card. It's a good card. Also, enchantment removal is something that black sucks at. We should be running more enchantment removal in our black decks. So let me introduce you to Baleful Beholder. When it enters the battlefield, everybody has to sacrifice an enchantment. In black decks, we are reanimating cards a lot. We even have access to blink abilities. The pseudo blink, like Feign Death. When a creature dies, it automatically pops back up. We can abuse ETBs, so why don't we do that? If we're going to accept that black struggles so much at getting rid of enchantments, maybe we should put more ways to get rid of those enchantments. But let's go ahead and look at the other types of removal. Now, note, all of our removal that we are using should fit into one of three categories. It is either abusable by the colors it is in, it is very, very low cost to the ground, or it is modal, meaning that even if the card costs more mana, it can get more things. Baleful Beholder just happens to be abusable by what the color black does. In the low-cost area, though, we've got Bitter Triumph. We can get rid of a creature or a planeswalker with this. Feed the Swarm, get rid of a creature or an enchantment. Hagra Mauling, this is modal because this lets us either kill a creature or it can be a land when we flip it around. Infernal Grasp can kill a creature. Murderous Rider can kill a creature or a planeswalker and also be a life-linking body. Necron Deathmark is a 5/3 flash creature that also lets us mill ourselves so we can use it to get closer to certain strategies we are trying to engage in. So like you use this in a Sephiroth deck to get things to trigger your dungeons. You can use this in any Reanimator deck to get more fodder into your grave. All around good card. Plaguecrafter, this 1 for 3s every single time. It comes into the battlefield, it kills itself, it kills 3 creatures or planeswalkers. This also means every single Plaguecrafter-like effect, like Slum Reaper, Fleshbag Marauder, all of these fit into this category. Please run more of these cards. They are really good. Power Word Kill is a basic murder spell. Just kill any non-typed creature of the ones listed on the card. Ravenous Chupacabra is a 4-cost 2/2 creature that can blow up a creature. It's not as good as the Deathmark in my opinion, but it does cost 1 less, and that's important. Royal Assassin allows us to destroy any tapped creature and just by tapping it. We sit this card on the board, and over time, it will generate lots and lots of value for us. Creatures tap for all kinds of things, not just attacking, but plenty of creatures, even commanders, have tap effects that they want to abuse. We can use this to keep those decks more honest. Sheoldred's Edict lets us basically do the same thing as Plaguecrafter, but we can force people into sacrificing non-tokens. Shriekmaw is nice and modal. We can pay 2 to evoke it, kill a card, and we can use any of the Feign Deathy, Blinky effects to abuse this card heavily. It goes really well in the Sephiroth Dungeon deck. It goes really well in Reanimation decks. Shriekmaw is just a really good card, and you should play it more often. Tragic Slip is a very interesting removal card. Black tends to get rid of creatures very, very often, sacrificing them for things like altars, and Tragic Slip abuses that by saying, if we lost a creature, then a creature gets neg 13, neg 13. This is important because indestructible effects are really hard for black to get rid of sometimes, and this is one of our ways to make certain that that happens. Oh, there's also one other thing of note. I'm not putting any cards on this list that are very expensive. So cards that are like $5 and up, with about one exception, I'm not putting on this list at all. So if you expect a Deadly Rollick to be here, that's why it's not. But let's move on to another area of the game that I'm sure most people have no trouble understanding: blue removal. If you're playing blue, you've got 2 real types of removal: counter spells and standard removal. So let's talk about the counter spells. You should be running Offer You Can't Refuse. Pay 1 mana, stop a non-creature spell, get treasures. This card is both low cost and modal because we can use it on our own cards if we need to ramp ourselves by 2 treasures. Arcane Denial and Counterspell are basic counter spells, one with upsides and downsides. Disruption Protocol allows us to counter spells and then tap any of our utility artifacts to make it equivalent to a counter spell. Negate counters any non-creature spell. Jawari Disruption you should be running because a lot of players try to curve out their turns, so their last spell on turn will almost always be one that they are curving out on, or if you are getting into a counter spell battle, they are probably curved out on that counter spell. So oftentimes this card will counter a spell and nobody will be able to pay the 1 for it. But the real reason we play it is say it with me, Modal, because it's also a land. And the final counterspell you should be playing, please play Wash Away. Oh, please, I beg of you, play this card. A 3-mana counterspell, which is not the worst thing in Commander, that can be a 1-mana counterspell that tells commanders to fuck off. Please run this card more. It is so good. Then you have basic removal like Imprison in the Moon. Enchant a creature, land, or planeswalker to turn it off. This is super important because we turn it into a land. Several types of removal spells, including board wipes, say things like non-land permanents. This allows us to do things like turn a commander off for an extended period of time, because it's very hard to just do something with a commander that's stuck as a land. You can recast commanders from the command zone all the time. It's a whole lot harder to operate when that commander's just locked under this thing. Pongify and Rapid Hybridization. I chose both of these because they're both the same card. Even though Pongify is a bit outside of the price limit I'm comfortable with, it tends to get reprints often enough to be affordable. Raven Form is modal. It lets us knock out a creature or an artifact. We can also foretell it to make sure that it's not costing us that beefy 3 cost. Reality Shift is decently costed at 2, but it says exile, which is super important. Resculpt also says exile, but it can also get rid of an artifact. Snap is a very interesting card that you should be running more often. Snap allows you to pop a creature to its owner's hand, which oftentimes is the difference between winning a game and not. But most importantly, we get to untap 2 lands with this. That's 2 lands we can use for a counterspell that turn. That's 2 lands we can use if we're trying to replicate this card to get a bunch of mana back for a Stormy turn. This card does a lot of work. And then Suspend. I don't see anybody play Suspend, but this is a funny card. Exile a creature and put time counters on it, and now it can't be played for 2 more turns. Also, fun fact, when you have the card pop out from this, you have 2 turns to set up to make sure that the creature will not be a problem. Sure, killing a commander with Pongify or Rapid Hybridization is better 9 times out of 10, but locking it down for a couple turns and having an opponent take the choice of, do you want your commander to circumvent commander tax, but you gotta wait 2 turns to play it? Or do you want to go ahead and just pretend this is any other basic-ass removal spell? Suspend does a lot of work. We should be running it more. But let's move on to green. Again, you should be running more removal. I have 15 in every single one of these colors, so that no matter what color deck you're running, even if it's mono-colored, you have no excuse anymore. Acidic Slime. This is the basic bitch of green removal. Blow up any artifact, enchantment, or land. It has Death Touch. The reason I include it is in Reanimation or Blink decks, we get to abuse this guy. Barrier Breach. 3 mana to blow up 3 enchantments. That's 1 mana per card it removes. That's good. We can also cycle it if it's worthless. Beast Within. Blow up any non-land, or blow up any permanent, even a land. We can use this to kill a Maze's End. Beast Within is a super good card. If you're not running it, I don't know why. It's in like every precon. Cankerbloom, it can proliferate us. It can also destroy artifacts or enchantments. That's just good. Colony Ambush. This lets us have a instant cast fight spell that, oh, by the way, is modal because it flips over to a land. Kogla can fight things. It can also blow up artifacts or enchantments. K-Grip has Split Second. This allows us to not only kill artifacts or enchantments, but also end stacks that are problematic. Lignify, this is our Imprison in the Moon, but green, because this makes a creature an 0/4 that loses all abilities. Lock a commander down with this thing. Have a good time. Outland Liberator, it's Cankerbloom, but it also makes you the target of the table because it turns on day-night, so good luck with using Outland Liberator. Ram through, make a creature you have deal power equal to its power. Yeah, damage equal to its power. There we go. Those are words. Creature deals damage equal to its power to a creature that you do not control. And if the creature has trample, then you get extra damage out of that. It's a fight spell that doesn't make your creature take damage. It's good. Reclamation Sage enters the battlefield, blows up an artifact or enchantment. Return to nature, blow up an artifact or enchantment. Or exile a card from a person's graveyard. So when somebody's about to reanimate something, just cast this and go, I exile the target. Screw you. Scattershot Archer. If we give this card Death Touch, this wipes the entire board of flyers. I don't know how to tell you that return on investment on this is always positive in the decks it's meant for. Song of the Dryads. This can enchant any permanent and turn it into a forest land. This is Imprisoned in the Moon on steroids. Terrastodon. This can blow up three non-creature permanents on the board and then make three elephants for each one we blow up. It's fine. Please, if you're playing green, you've got the mana to spend for this thing, and this thing can pop into the into the battlefield and say, yeah, the Bolas's Citadel, I don't care about that card anymore. The Omniscience, somebody cast it, I don't care about that card anymore. It just takes problematic cards out of the board, and it does it for multiple people all at once. It's a good card. But let's move on to red, and let's start out again with counterspells. Red has 2 counterspells everybody should know about by now. Pyroblast and Red Elemental Blast. They're the same card. Counter a blue spell or destroy a blue card. Most cards that you care about countering in things like Counter Wars are also blue. So you play your commander, opponent counters your commander, you play this, you counter the counterspell. Everything works out. Abrade can blow up creatures or artifacts. That's going to be important in a sec. Aftershock can blow up creatures, artifacts, or lands. I know that people think land removal is bad in Commander, but I'm going to tell you right now, Maze's End is a Magic the Gathering card, and printed on it is the word win the game, or is the phrase I win the game. So maybe you should have some type of land removal in all of your decks, just in case. You know, Glacial Chasm's also a card. By Force, destroy up to X target artifacts. That's just good value. Cathartic Pyre, blow up a creature, or you can discard 2, or you can discard 2, draw 2. So this can help us loot as well as be a removal spell. Chaos Warp can get rid of any permanent. Comet Storm can deal X damage to any one thing, or we can keep paying into the X and deal damage to multiple things. We can use this to kill a board. We can use this to kill a bunch of players. It's a good Magic the Gathering card. Fling lets us take anything on our board and crash it into an enemy player or an enemy card. Skred. If you're willing to play Snowlands, this will deal for 1 mana. This can end up throwing like 10 damage at any creature. Vandal Blast. For 1 mana, it blows up an artifact. Or for 5 mana, it blows up all of the ones you don't own. Shatter Skull Smashing. This deals X damage to any number of creatures, or up to 2 target creatures or planeswalkers. If X is 6 or more, it deals twice that. And then it divides that damage as you choose. But here's the important part about Shatter Skull Smashing. It's a land. It's modal. It sits in your land slot. There is 0 cost to running this card. You literally go, oh, I go down a mountain and I go up a Shatter Skull Smashing. Shattering Spree. It just blows up a lot of artifacts. Wild Magic Surge. It's Chaos Warp again, except it says destroy. Finally, there is one more red removal spell that I need to tell you guys about, and it is not red at all. But if you are playing a red deck, this should be one of your mana rocks. Liquid Metal Torque. Target non-land permanent becomes an artifact in addition to its other types. That doesn't say target one you control. That says any target. If you think red can't kill enchantments, you're lying to yourself. Use Liquid Metal Torque, turn anything into an artifact, and then smack it with a Braid. That's kind of important. Please use Liquid Metal Torque. It's a good magic card. You probably have one in your bulk. But white. White does everything in Magic nowadays anyway. I can skip this section. But let's go ahead and start out with a white counterspell. Everybody knows this thing. I sincerely hope everybody knows this thing. This card right here, this pay 1 mana to troll the entire table as your mono white deck gets to pretend it's blue. Yeah, Mana Tithe is a Magic the Gathering card. It's a cool card. Please play it. It's funny as hell. Cathar Commando. This is just our Canker Bloom again. Sack it to blow up an artifact or enchantment. It also has Flash. Crush Contraband. We can exile an artifact or enchantment, or both. Darksteel Mutation. This is the Imprisoned to the Moon of this set, except it's a little stronger because it gives the creature indestructible. So yeah, your commander's indestructible. And it has no abilities. And it's an 0/1. And it ain't going anywhere. Have fun. Declaration in Stone. Exile a creature and all their creatures with the same name, and then the player investigates for each one. So we're paying 2 mana, we're exiling a creature and handing somebody a clue. Or the elf player, the Freyalise person who's just sitting there spitting out Llanowar elf tokens. You're like, okay, cool, that's fine. I'm tired of dealing with that. All the tokens you have, they are all now clues. You get to draw some cards, but I'm tired of dealing with your elf shit. Fateful Absence, blow up a creature or a planeswalker. Generous Gift, blow up any permanent. Get Lost, blow up a creature, enchantment, or planeswalker. Grasp of Fate, get rid of a card from each player's board. Highcliff Felidar, this card is beautiful in white decks because white decks get to do one really cool thing. They get to blink cards. Highcliff Felidar says, when it enters the battlefield, choose a creature with the greatest power among creatures a player control and destroy those creatures, but for each opponent. So this card comes into play, kills 3 cards, and then you get to do things like, oh, I'm just going to cast Ephemerate. I want to do it again. Now this card is killing 3, 6, 9, 12 creatures. Eventually, it's depleting the entire board. Card's cool. I don't see anybody play it. Please play this card. Oblivion Ring. This lets you get rid of any non-land permanent. The most important part about this card, though, is that the Oblivion Ring has 2 sets of text. Now, you may not know if that's important, but if you're a longtime Magic player, you know why this matters. So, here's how this works. Oblivion Ring and other banishing type effects exile a card until the Oblivion Ring leaves the battlefield. Cool, we all agree on that. Problem: because every banishing effect that is not Oblivion Ring has this effect worded, like Grasp of Fate, as a single paragraph, Oblivion Ring gets to do something neat. We get to play it on a card, exile it, and then immediately blink it. If we blink it with something like Ephemerate, the Oblivion Ring leaves the battlefield before its second ability can be seen by the game state. And if that happens, the card Oblivion Ring touched never comes back. And you get to kill 2 cards with it. So, it's a good Magic card. You should play it in a lot of decks that have blink spells. It's very, very silly. Also, you can't Ephemerate an Oblivion Ring, but you know what I mean. There's plenty of ways you can blink it. Then Path to Exile. You know this card. Swords to Plowshare. You also should know this card. They're in precons. Stroke of Midnight. Blow up any non-land permanent. Skyclave Apparition. Get rid of any non-land, non-token permanent with mana value 4 or less. So, like, most of the ones in the game. There. That was white. We covered red and green and blue and black. All of them. We've done all of it. We've done every one of it. And every card in here was $5 or less with the exception of a few, like the Shatter Skull Smashing and the Felidar Guardian, which is only really pricey because it was in one piece of sealed Magic product. That was stupid. If you want to see this list, please, I actually have this all as a list right here. It's going to be in the description. If you want easy access to this list of removal spells that are all decently cheap, you could spend $80 and get all of it and then never have an excuse to not run removal in your decks ever again. I'm going to throw this in the description. But the entire reason I'm making this list and the entire reason I'm doing this is because players simply do not run enough interaction in their games. That's one of the 2 cards they don't run enough of. Interaction and lands. They're like, oh, well, I want good spells, so I want fewer lands, and my deck has a lot of synergies I care about, so I want fewer removal spells so I can focus on those synergies. And oh my god, why am I losing all of these games? It's because you're not interacting with your opponents. There's a certain threshold of interaction you need to have at your tables to make sure your opponents don't just shoot out ahead of you. You're not trying to play a control deck every time you go into a game of Magic, but you are trying to make sure that you are carrying your weight at the table, making sure that everybody else doesn't just automatically win because nobody decided to stop the Super Friends player from amassing a giant board with their Planner Bridge. So, I don't know. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Please, Prismatic Bridge, not Planner Bridge. Sorry. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. What niche removal spells do you use in your decks? Which ones are included in any color that you have? And if you want me to do another one of these videos where I'm talking about removal spells that are in multicolor, then I can do that too. But honestly, I think the monocolor ones are good enough for a video because you can put them in any deck that just happens to have those colors. You got 15 in each of them now, so there's no excuse. Go forth and make sure that players don't auto-win because nobody's interacting with their boards. Insert end of video tagline here. Hey, Hey, I just quickly want to give a thank you to all of my wonderful patrons who keep this show running. YouTube and Twitch are a pretty bumpy ride at the best of times, and the stability that Patreon provides me is worth more than I can say here. I'd also like to thank each and every one of my $20 and up patrons here, and they would be Red Joker, Britzkrieg, Cameron, Dren, Jemshin, Smiling DM, Poundini, Mabbity Babbity, Naomi, Isaac, Agamotto, Jordan, Ravi, Giuni, Kiratorian, Prisma, all of you, Sagitt, I'm not saying that part, and Starlight. And finally, thank you to everyone else that helps keep this channel alive. While you're here, why not check out another video? And thank you for watching.